Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to season 2 of Conversations in Pop Culture, where I have with me professional wrestler Logan Black, who legitimately has wrestled in almost every single Northeast slash New England promotion ever, which is crazy. So, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you having me. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm very excited because I've been wanting to do this for a while, and it just seems that I got busy and I never reached out. And we met at, I believe, Butch for a Score, and yeah, it's been a while. It's been almost a year, and then all this stuff. So I'm very excited, and I think the best place to start with you is Warrior of Wrestling because you have a rich history with that promotion.
I do. There is a bit of a history with that. At this point, it's pretty much just become history. I think. As I'm getting smacked in the face by my cat. She wants to be in my lap. She wants to not be in my lap. She wants attention, is what she is. She knows I'm talking to people, so she knows attention to be had. No, so yeah, I think at this point, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, we were just talking before we went live. You're a comic person too, and you get where certain writers or certain characters have their eras, right? And I think that was an era for me. I learned a lot going on over there. I learned a ton about the pro wrestling business. I learned a ton about myself. But it's very much that is what happened, that existed, and now I'm on to I'd say a different volume, so to speak.
Yeah, and one of the things, and I don't want to dwell too much on it because I think there's so much more to talk about, but one of the things that I think is super cool about this era is that you sort of had a big learning in tag team wrestling there. And I know that you've teamed with American Nightmare and Dirtbag Dan. And then obviously you went onwards from there to form the Apostles of Chaos, which is still in existence. And then you also had a massive singles career as well. And I think that's something that's super unique about this because, and I feel like your tag team work gets spoken about a lot more than your singles career does. And so even with all that and the time you spent there, what was that like? Because I don't want to go too deep into all of it, but obviously you had the best of both worlds in many ways.
Yeah, man, it's one of those things where I mean, I love wrestling. I think that anybody who's involved in the business, anybody who puts time and effort in, they love it. You have to love it, or else you go crazy. So I love it, and because I love it, excuse me, everything is just I can enjoy singles, I can enjoy tags, I can enjoy all these different styles. For me, I think tag team wrestling is something that I enjoy so much because Alex Shelley put it to me at a seminar where he said tag team matches are a gimmick match, no different than a ladder match or a cage match or anything else. And I think that's why I like it so much, is because it forces, the people involved and everything else to kind of think outside of the box. If you're an artist and you only paint in one small square of a canvas, what are you doing? Open up, try the different, try the rest of the canvas. And that's, I think, what tag wrestling does for me, is it allows me to really think outside the box and go crazy and have a lot of fun. But, single stuff, man, I've really, really enjoyed, especially as of late, getting to experiment with the hardcore stuff and the deathmatch stuff and all the no DQ stuff that I've been doing as of late. I've got a really fun match that'll be put out at some point soon with Nick Stapp. That should be coming out soon, either to YouTube or IWTV. Who the hell knows at this point? But if you follow me, I'm sure I'll be posting about it.
Yeah, and before we dive into some of the single stuff, I do want to talk about the tag team stuff because obviously you had the American Nightmare with Dirtbag Dan, and obviously you won titles with him, and then the two of you ran for a while. And so what was that entire relationship like, and winning the titles and really, having a great run in Warrior?
I'll tell you what, man. It's so funny you bring up Dirtbag Dan because I was talking to Dan yesterday. Something had kind of come up, and just the slow catching up. It does. Wrestling is one of those things where, again, you are super close to somebody. You're like pretty much existing week in, week out with them. Then you separate for years, but one phone call, one text, one comment on social media, and our lifestyles being similar. Uh, and I like the fact that he was a big dude who could legitimately rip your head off with his bare, frying pan like hands. But at the same time, the dude was like, "Yo, I'm gonna do this flip over the top rope. Watch me. Oh, look at this. Oh, watch me move. I move like a cruiserweight." And he would pull this stuff off. And he was one of those guys who just always wanted to learn. And again, like, it was a really easy match for us to get put together when we were trying to put stuff together for that stable. Sinclair joined the Marines, so he wasn't as active with things. So then it kind of was left to Chris and I to be tag partners. And we haven't looked back since. Again, like, we get along so well. Prior to COVID, we were literally on the road 2-3 times a month together, like traveling all over the place. We'll be together this weekend as we head up to Maine for Limitless Wrestling. And that's going to be, a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on there. You can check us out literally every week on Limitless Wrestling's The Road on IWTV, because we had a lot of stuff on there.
And let's talk about some of those matches that you guys had, because across a bunch of promotions, obviously, Jose and Scotty Priest was a big one. That you had 4 matches with them, and those were wars. And so let's start there, because that was something that obviously was rather intense, facing those guys 4 or 5 times. So what was it like facing those guys, especially early on as a team?
Well, again, because Chris and I would train together, it was early on was I think sort of subjective, just because like we already had that chemistry built from training together. And I'm trying to think back to what it was working Scotty and Jose, and I mean,
just to refresh your memory,
is it safe to say that I'm glad those are over?
they were intense, because there was like double DQs, I think, in 3 of them, and obviously there were like double pins and a bunch of this stuff, and like these matches were not normal for lack of a better word.
I think peeling the curtain back just a bit, we wanted to establish ourselves, and we didn't kind of care how we did. So we just did our own thing. You know what I mean? Like, we were just like, we're going to tear through whoever we need to tear through. Not that anything has changed right now, but I also feel like the competition that we're in there with is certainly of a much higher caliber. And because of that, it's a lot harder for us to just, tear through people. It's not Scotty and Jose.
And talking about high caliber matches, obviously you had a match with Thunder Rose on Holiday, and both of those women are monsters. And I say that with the utmost respect, because they will kill you. There's a famous YouTube video of Thunder Rose chopping somebody, and you can see, and it's like a fan, and like apparently she didn't like the shirt the guy was wearing so clearly. What were those matches like? Because obviously it's intergender. Intergender at this point was starting to get really big. And then you're now in with arguably 2 of the best women in the entire industry.
I would say, arguably 2 of the best women in the world is probably the best way to pull it. Holiday is killing it literally everywhere that she goes. There's a brilliant, brilliant in-ring competitor. Thunder Rose is the NWA Women's Champion. That's like lineage dating back like decades, probably close to 100 years. Going in there against them, it was, again, we had to establish who we were. We were looking to put our names out there, and we knew that the best way to make our names, best way to make your names is off of people who are, already doing their own thing and already killing it. So that was our thoughts behind it. Would love another opportunity to do that again at a place with a crowd that would appreciate it a little bit better. Because sometimes those crowds can get a little bit, a little bit bored really quick in terms of like everything else going on. But to get in there with a crowd that really appreciates a match like that is something that would make me very happy.
And even to talk about that, because obviously that promotion trusted you enough to be in that spot. How does that make you feel? I know that prior to all this, you won. You were I guess I don't know. I don't know if you were there heavyweight, but you were there.
No.
I
I was
guess
a no
sort of.
limits champion over there. I was a 2-time tag champion.
And so
Um,
obviously they trusted you somewhat, but even still, when you're put in with really really good people and people that are well known around the world, obviously that's another form of trust. In the
sure. So here's my question: How much do we want to pull that curtain back? Do we want to pull it all the way back, or do we just want to give a little peek? I'm cool with either. I'm just making sure that I'm not breaking protocol on your show.
Oh, it's up to you. It's complete free reign.
Cool. So
So
let's get real on here. Let's get real for real for real. The only reason that I ever had held titles at Warriors of Wrestling was because the
Triple
promoter
H
knew that
didn't
he
want
could.
to work Tuesdays. Triple H didn't want to work Tuesdays.
Thankfully, we didn't have a Triple H. No, it was literally because he could trust me. The first time we won the tag titles was, I think, the second or third show that we ever ran. It was because the tag champions we had were no show. They didn't want to show up that night. So he knew he could put them on us, and that he could trust because we weren't going anywhere. The second time I won it, again, same deal, that we can go in there and we can work with anybody and have a good match. Same thing, the No Limits title, somebody was supposed to win it. They couldn't make other shows. So it was literally that I was reliable, and that's why I was given it. It wasn't politics. It wasn't me bullshitting or I don't know, am I holding my language too?
Oh, you can curse. I don't give a shit.
Okay. I'll try not to. It comes out like
No,
very easily
it's
sometimes.
the internet. It's uncensored. So
So yeah, like it was none of that. It was literally just like I was the person in a position that I could be trusted, and I mean that is something that I genuinely do take to heart. Like I think in any promotion that I work for, I have the reputation as being somebody who, no matter who they put in the ring with Logan Black, it's going to be a good match. It might not be a great match. It might not be a spectacular match, but it's going to be something that is better than good. And again, that's a reputation that I wear with pride, and that's the same deal when it comes to all that other stuff you're talking about.
Well, one of the things that I think is super important, and any young wrestler watching this, I think this is going to speak directly to them. And there's been other wrestlers who have provided advice. Logan, Easton, the Rooks. I think they're the Rooks, however his name is said, and I love Logan, and he's great,
Wonderful
but
dude.
he's brilliant in the ring as well. He gave advice on a Matt Hardy incident that happened with him as a young wrestler, and he told the story on this show. So it's perfectly fine to disclose that. But one of the things that I think, and we're starting to see a bunch of young wrestlers getting signed to WWE who are on the indies, and I don't think I need to mention who they are because everybody knows who I'm referring to. But I think that's one of the reasons how you get signed is you're trustworthy and that you show up on time. You pay attention. You're the person that gets there early. You don't really care if it's a dark match or you're the main event. Brex Keller was on, or Bro Keller was on, and he was saying that he doesn't care if he's, the dark match or the main event. He just wants to be on the show. And I think that's something that's super important that a lot of people in this industry, they need to check their ego. And it seems that
Absolutely.
you checked yours a while ago, and it's actually served you well.
It's that punk rock thing, man. I say it all the time when it comes to literally literally anything, man. It's punk rock. I am no better than the people paying their money to get in there. None of the bands that I went to go see growing up ever took that idea of like, we're playing on a stage, stay off my stage. I hate that kind of thing. It's the same deal with me. Obviously, you're paying to see wrestling. I'm going to give you my absolute best. I'm going to give you your money's worth. But like, come by the merch table. Like, I'm not going to sit there and talk to you like I only see dollar signs in your eyes. Like, we're all human. Let's support each other. You want to buy a shirt of mine? Dope. You want to buy the shirt of the guy next to me? Awesome. Like, let's create this community where everybody is looking out for each other. You're still coming to a show. And again, it's the same when it came to like punk and hardcore, where like I would still pay my $5 to $10 to go see these bands play, even though like they'd be hanging out with me. It's not like this. It was the thing when I first broke in, when they were like, you can't be like the fans. You can't be on the same. The second that they feel that you're on the same level as them, they're not going to respect you. They're not going to spend money. I don't know, man. I have some fans of mine, plenty of them, that like I'll talk to at least once a week just because they're chill people. And like, hey, how's your family? What's going on? Cool. Oh, you see these comics I bought? Do you dig that? Cool. What comics are you? Like nonsense like that. And every time out, they'll always buy my shirts. They'll always come hang with me at the merch table. They'll always pay to see me. It doesn't work like that. I think that kind of thought process is outdated. So keeping that ego out of everything that I do, literally what I'm all about, 1,000%.
Yeah, I think things are changing. I also think that COVID has even furthered that position in many ways, where I think we're starting to see, and obviously I come from and I see the cosplay community. I also am involved heavily in the comic community, and I'm starting to see, there are people who sort of were out there on the front and said, "Hey, this is where I'm at," and that they were active, and we're starting to see their true colors. And I even think with wrestlers now, we're starting to see who's a nice person in the industry and who's not a nice person in many ways. And we're starting to see, and it has nothing to do with talent. It has to do with, who's actually gives a shit, who actually cares about the fans, who realizes that for a lot of people, for wrestling is an escape. And that's been somewhat taken away. And that I think you're one of the guys that sort of is out there, sort of, down very leveled.
I think that it just takes, and I think most wrestlers are at this point right now where it's like, you can't ever lose sight of the fact that, like, we're all still fans. Like, we're all still on that same deal. Yeah, we invested a buttload of money and time into, learning this craft and gear and, get on the road and all these other sacrifices that we make. But at the end of the day, man, like, we're all fans too. Like, there's no reason to be disrespectful or mean to fans, just to be mean to them. You know what I mean? At least that's how I look at it. This is everything that I'm saying is literally just how I look at it and nothing else.
And speaking about that, because I think you've had a bunch of awesome matches, and one of the tag team matches I want to talk about that sort of, I would imagine, is sort of a fan thing, but maybe not at the time, but looking back, was against Private Party. Because obviously they're in AEW, and it's super cool that you got to wrestle them on the Indies. And I think you wrestled them twice. And so,
yeah, I think so.
And so what was that like? Because I don't know, when you were wrestling them, I think it was obvious they were going to be in some big promotion. It just wasn't where they were going to be.
So, again, I'll peel, because it's not my story to tell. I'll just peel back a little bit. Towards the end of their run over there, we knew that they were getting the contract because it was things were starting to bubble, and we were like, all right, this is where it's going to go. And I mean, I'll criticize where it's at, where like that promotion did not take advantage of the fact that these guys were going to be huge stars and handle it in such a way, but that's kind of been a running theme for them. I think one of the important things to take from that was just those guys, I think from the get-go, Isaiah Cassidy started a little bit later than Mark did, but Mark has been like superstar since day one, just outlandish, but great personality, like fun to be around, but definitely just like, yeah, that guy's operating on a different level, but in the best way possible. And you got that off the bat. So again, it was only a matter of time before you saw them on TV.
And then also we got to talk about Jeff Cannibal and Tara Calloway, because I know that you're somewhat close with them, and I love Jeff. Tara sort of stood me up for an interview, but I'm sure at some point we're going to have a conversation, and I'll just be a comic coming into Earth. So that'll solve that problem.
Yeah, you know what it is? Tara is just she's such a boss as a human being. Like, she has so many different projects that she's doing. Literally, she's one of my closest friends, and it takes her days sometimes to get back in touch with me. And I get it, because like she's managing, being a wife and being a wrestler and running Dropkick Depression and all the other stuff that she does. Literally, both of them are two of my favorite people in the universe, like human beings. Forget wrestling. Two of the best human beings that I could ever come in contact with.
And so, I mean, you've wrestled them a bunch of times, and I don't know if this is true or not, but obviously I make fun of my friends differently in what we do and whenever in our sectors that we're involved in. And I would imagine in the ring, you can do certain things with your friends that you can't do with other people.
I mean, well, yeah, I think I'll give an example in one of the matches that Jeff and I had at H2O, where we it was a thumbtack, soda cut open soda cans, beer cap or soda cap, whatever you want to call them, and fork death match. Like it was just all this ridiculous weaponry. And I suggested to Jeff, like, hey man, I'm gonna take these thumbtacks and I'm gonna put them in your mouth and I'm gonna punch them out. You can spit them out. In the age of COVID, that sounds absolutely deplorable, but this is pre-COVID, so work with me. And he's like, "Oh man, I'm really really worried. I'm gonna swallow it." And of course, I'm a friend, and I'm like, "Hey, I've got you covered." But like, if you're not comfortable, man, let's just not do it. And he was saying, he was like, "You know what? No, it's let's make it happen because we have that kind of trust. I would do things with Jeff. He'd do things with me that we never trust. Same with Tara. Tara was always reluctant to do things that I wanted to do in terms of things to my own body. I'm like, yeah, give me a Death Valley driver into this picnic bench. She's like, no, never. What is wrong with you? I'm like, no, trust me, do it. And of course she does it. We break the bench in half. And she's just like freaking out, like, oh my God, I killed you. I'm like, no, fine, just keep going, keep going. And yeah, it makes it so much easier when there's like that relationship between two people in the ring where they just I could do anything with those guys, with those two, and easy peasy. It's a night off.
Yeah, yeah, and even to go further here, because obviously we're going to talk about the road in a second here, but to even go further, because obviously you and Tara have teamed up as well.
We have.
And so it's kind of cool at the same time that in primetime pro wrestling. And I've seen that match, and I enjoyed that match, and that was a cool match. I think Bobby Orlando was in that match. And so what is it like to be able to face somebody but then also team up with them? Because then you know what they can do, and obviously you're really close with both of them and that stuff. And so obviously, and that crowd, primetime was a great crowd.
An absolutely phenomenal crowd. The DC crowd is just unreal. It was great because we were just, it was fun. And when you're tagging with somebody that you're close with, it's fun because you can just, I sat there just doing whatever I could to kind of like make her break character and make her pop, which is usually my thing. I do it all the time with Chris. Chris has started throwing a spear in his matches. And if I'm like on a corner or I'm somewhere, you'll just hear me like, on this day. And he just always has to cover his face every time he does it. But I would do that with Tara. Like I just, be saying stuff, or, I think we were selling to the back. I said something to her and she had to like nudge me like, stop. Which is, it's me being a clown. But like I said, it's a different thing, but it's all the same because you're still getting to work with somebody you're super close with.
And that match was cool because obviously Billy also was someone in that match, and then Billy faked an injury. I don't know if I could say that, but then we had this entire big moment where obviously you were the heel, and then now there's all this big, drive coming out and all that stuff, and then Bobby Orlando's getting the biggest pop ever, and like the way that went. So what was that like? Because obviously, it's it was an easy heel moment, but at the same time, you made Bobby look really good.
Right. I think what really lent to what we were doing was that the crowd was just so hot. Like that crowd was so into everything that everybody was doing.
I was there. It was great.
Right, they were, and that really helped because all I needed to do was come out and just pull off some nonsense as a heel, and boom, boo. All right, we've got him. What are we gonna do from here? So then you just turn the volume up a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, and by the end of it, everybody ends up coming out beneficial. It was most certainly an experience. Like I miss those shows quite a bit. I miss shows in general at this point. I just miss anything.
And then obviously let's fast forward to Butch vs. Gore, and obviously this is somewhat controversial to some degree because Mark Haggerty was involved, and that's a whole box of
that's a can of worms right there.
That's a box of fuckery right there, for lack of a better word. But obviously you were teaming up with Ariel and Nix, and I thought the match was great. Beyond what I just said, the match was great. I think Il O'Neill and Jordan Blade, I want to say, in that, and Solo and Willow, and I love Solo, and Solo is also probably one of the top 50 wrestlers in the world right now, hands down. And obviously, what was that like? Because I love Ariella next too. I think
So
she's
it
great.
was, again, it's my first time tagging with Ariella, and I mean, at least everybody that I've ever tagged with, I've had like a super close relationship with, or I had wrestled with them or against them multiple times or many times. But Ariella, that was kind of a new experience. Like Ariella and I were always cool, but it was something new, and I think we worked together really nicely. It certainly helped us a lot. That, I mean, the two teams that we were in there with are both like uh, awesome. Like they were just great. I have everybody knows how great Solo and Willow are. Like I don't have to sit here and like put them over because they're like at that level. But I have sung the praises of Eel and Jordan literally everywhere that I've went and be like, everybody is sleeping on this team. Northeast, get your shit together and get them up here all the time. So hopefully we've hopefully that is indicative of what people are looking to do in 2021 and 2022.
And obviously, Butch vs. Gore is a cool show because I think in many ways it opened the gate for a lot of wrestling opportunities for a
Oh
lot
yeah.
of people. And so obviously, I don't think Effie's Big Gay Brunch could have happened without Butch vs. Gore. Obviously, Billy's Paris is bumping. I think is what's going on. Obviously, this Friday at 10 p.m. we have Effie's Big Gay Block
Yep.
on Fight Forever, and so obviously that's pretty cool, and everything that's going on with that. And what was that like to be part of that show? Because that was also, I think, Primetime's first show streaming on IWTV Live, which is awesome at the same time. And I think it was also trending on Twitter for a little bit as well.
It was trending on Twitter. I don't think it was the first one they did on IWTV. I feel like they had done other stuff only because I remember getting a bunch of Twitter followers from the first appearance I made. But I also could be totally wrong. I got lots of brain damage. But it was – so I said this in my podcast interview with Erica Lee, where I talked about being in that environment where, like, so many shows, and I say this pretty candidly all the time, that a lot of stuff that goes on in the New York, New Jersey area is just like, it's awful. And not that the shows are awful, not that the talent is awful, but it's a lot of politics and a lot of nonsense. And like, there really is no general feeling of togetherness. Nobody is working together. Everybody's ready to cut each other's throat. And that was a feeling that literally from walking in the door, I did not get anything like when it came to that show. Everybody was there for each other. Everyone was looking out for each other. Everybody was just chill and relaxed. And it certainly helped that like the fan base there was just like totally cool. And like it was one of those things where like everything that was supposed to go right did, and everything that could have gone wrong managed to go right. It was, you want to talk about a perfect wrestling show, that is what that would be for me. And a funny or fun note of trivia, the night prior to that show was the Cannonball Tara Calloway wedding in New Jersey, and half the roster was all there. So we were all sitting there chilling. I'm at a table with Willow and Solo, just chatting it up. And like, all right, cool. See you tomorrow. Oh, you're booked. Yeah, I'm booked. Sweet. See you tomorrow. So that was just a fun little thing. That was, I think, the last wrestling weekend of 2020, and then everything shut down.
The last major show was, I think, I can't even think. It's a mass promotion out in the Midwest. Was like the last thing that was streamed on WTV on like March 20th. So this was one of the last shows by far. And
right. Yeah. It was the last it was the last one for me. I think the weekend after I did a string of maybe one or two shows that were just small stuff in like Massachusetts, some of the shows out there. But this was like the last legit wrestling weekend.
It was legitly snuck in, and I was like debating because my mom actually joined me for that show, and she came and it was great and to watch it. And one of the things that I was debating with her during that show, just so everybody knows, and I feel like this was 20 years ago, by the way. That's how I feel. But I was saying, should I go? Like, COVID's coming. Should I go? Is this a good thing to do? And obviously, I mean, I went, and it kind of just snuck in right after. And then pretty much the week after, everything just got shut down, which is crazy. So that's the environment of all of this. So
yeah, it was. I forgot who I was. I think it might have been Matt Sells who made the point of literally at this point last year, it was like, hey, remember when we were making jokes about COVID and it was like, this is crazy that nobody's going to catch it over here. Like literally, Mark Adam Haggerty on that show made that joke. I had another friend who on another show was told by the promoter to make some like a joke about Corona. And this is all around that same time because like nobody was expecting it to be what it was. And then like 3 weeks later and explodes.
Yeah, it's a crazy world, and it feels like it's 10 years ago. And obviously, there's a few promotions that have adapted really well, but I do want to talk about one more thing or a group of things before we get into the road, which is really well, and also Pioneer Valley, I think promotion is wrestling. I'm not too sure.
Pioneer Valley Pro Wrestling.
Pro wrestling. There we go. But I do want to talk about one thing that sort of is a fan thing, because in Warrior, you got to wrestle a bunch of WWE guys and former WWE guys. I know you had a match with X-Pac. You had a match with Billy Gunn. I think Mr. Anderson is another one. Rhino, Balls Mahoney. And so obviously being a fan of wrestling and all that stuff, obviously it's kind of cool to get to go through a bunch of people in the Attitude Era. And obviously Rhino's sort of a Tommy Dreamer as well. And Tommy's still wrestling and Rhino's still wrestling. Billy's still wrestling. And obviously, what was that like as a fan? Because I know that's part of your singles career.
So, guys like Tommy and Rhino for me were the big ones because I grew up a massive, massive ECW fan. I used to go to shows a lot when I was a kid over here. So those for me were like the coolest things. And honestly, like Rhino was such a learning experience. Tommy was also a fantastic learning experience. It was, again, it was a matter of, in some of those cases, being put in a position where like I was the only one that could be relied on to do that with some of these guys. But it was always fun because you always go in, you take something, you learn something from every experience like that, whether it's, something massive that you take away or something small, but it's all things. Each of those matches are all things that I, continue to apply today. The match you mentioned against Mr. Anderson, he actually, and it wasn't his fault at all. He showed up like 5 minutes before our match. So he's kind of like, hey, we'll talk. I don't know how much time we got. And I'm like, no, just call it in the ring. And he was like, awesome. And we did. And it was a very basic match, but I learned at that point, like certain things. Okay, next time I try this. This worked out well. So every little bit of all of that, whether it was, learning that Balls Mahoney is not going to catch a dive and just clap to the side, they're all things you learn. And all things that you apply as you continue to move on.
And even just from your own personal position, I mean, obviously you're a fan of Tommy Dreamer and Rhino.
Right.
Like, that must mean something to you, saying, oh, man, I get to be in a ring with them, because not everybody in the wrestling world gets to do that and get the opportunity. And so just on a personal level, it has to make you feel special and good and saying, hey, I got to do something, be beyond just being a wrestler, because now you're sort of, I wouldn't say you're living like the fan dream, but, it's something like that.
No, I get, at the end of the day, I can look back and say that I did something really awesome. And I think more important to me is being able to look back at it at any point and just be like, yeah, 11-year-old me would be really, really stoked at what I am doing at this point.
And then we're going to jump forward because I do want to talk about Jeremy Leary. And I think that guy has gotten the best bounce back in wrestling ever. From his entire match with Chris Strattonlander and Ashley Vox, I think it was in that match. And then obviously Skylar was in that match. And then you two have been tearing it up in PvP. And obviously, and just it's amazing, the two of you. And so what is your relationship with Jeremy Leary all about? And that guy's got like the biggest bounce back, and he's killing it on the road, which we're going to get to in a second.
Again, this theme that flows through my life, punk rock, man. I met Jeremy. So a guy by the name of Johnny Torres, who does a lot of stuff with Limitless Wrestling on the road. Johnny Torres and I met working these like weird shows in Brooklyn that he came through to. he started up his own promotion and booked me on them. And that's where I met Leary. And I think Leary and I just, again, we clicked because we were just, punks. A very similar kind of outlook on everything. And that was pretty much it. Like, he started booking us for this promotion out in Western Massachusetts. Or I don't remember what it's there. RPW was the promotion. And RPW, like the ashes of RPW, is kind of what opened up Blitzkrieg Pro as we have it now. But yeah, Jeremy and I it's that whole kindred spirits thing, man. Like, if I get along with you, we're going to end up tagging, and we're going to end up having good chemistry, and we're going to make some magic.
Yeah, to even go off of that, because obviously we spoke about 3 teams so far, and obviously it seems that you gel with certain people really well, and then I would imagine you don't gel with others. And so obviously, because I've heard stories, and people say, hey, I hate my tag team partner. We don't get along, but we're good in the ring. Yeah, and then you also hear stories saying, hey, I'm work really well with my tag team partner, and we work so well that we don't need to think. Delmy was explaining that about Ashley Vox, because guys, they're sisters, in case you didn't know, where they don't need to sort of think, and they got that thing going for them. And so obviously, how important it is for you to be on the same page and gel and have that chemistry and have that same outlook, because I've heard both ends of it, and so it's complicated, I would imagine, in tag team wrestling.
No, I think you hit it right on the head on that. It's you got to be on the same page. That's really all it boils down to. If you're not, then you end up making mistakes. You end up getting sloppy. Everybody has to be kind of on the same page and looking to wrestle the same match and do the same kind of stuff and work towards the goal of what that match is, which obviously, you put that together, you decide it. But, if people aren't on the same page, it becomes sloppy. It becomes a mess. I thankfully cannot think of any examples of people I've tagged up with where I've been totally like off, just completely off with them. But yeah, I think it's very easy to see. Like, Jeremy and I were very, very simple about how we went about things. It was, we're going in, we're going to do our stuff, we're going to have fun, we're going to get fancy at some point, and then take it home.
And then even to continue with this promotion, you've had, I think, two massive singles rivalries. I mean, obviously Teddy Goods.
Teddy Goods, yeah.
Goods. I can't speak today. That's cool.
That's all good.
So obviously the two of you went at it massively. And so what was that like in this promotion? Because when you're facing somebody a bunch of times, and we didn't even go through like a bunch of the tag team wars you had in Warrior, but obviously when you're facing somebody, you start to figure out all their, I guess it's reading is a good word to use, where you can figure out what they're going to do, how they're going to do it. And obviously you need to bring something new into the match, especially for the fans as well, because if you just do the match 4 times in a row and a bunch of the same fans were there, they're going to get bored really quickly.
Right. I think off the bat, Teddy is just a stupid incredible athlete. It's so good and so smooth in there. I think when it came to Teddy and I and being able to put those matches together, him and I were just very much on the same page of like, hey, we're both being put in here as, fan favorites. We don't want the crowd to sit here and, have to boo one of us. We want them to cheer. We want them to come up to us, at intermission and spend their money at our tables. So let's go out there and just put something together that is entertaining and keeps us both looking good. And again, to his credit, Teddy always made me look like $1 billion. Again, you talk about like chemistry. Teddy Goods and I always have had excellent chemistry. I can't think back to one match that we had that wasn't something that I look back on as a highlight.
Yeah, and you mentioned something super interesting, and I have to ask. So obviously, what is that like also in the ring when you're, a face, and obviously, there's merch, and merch in wrestling is super important at this point.
Oh, yeah.
And so, because it can help make break, it can help, subsidize. Austin Aries was on an interview explaining that, he now handles all of his own bookings on the indies. because he subsidizes at shows with merch. And obviously, merch, different wrestlers do it differently. It could subsidize your travel, subsidize, your justification. It could subsidize if something goes wrong, or it could be treated more or less like a bonus to some degree. And so there's a bunch of different viewpoints on it. And obviously, it's trickier when you're a heel, but it could be also very tricky when there's no heels, because primetime is complicated in that way, and a few other promotions as well. We're in a lot of promotions now. I don't feel like there's a true bad guy.
Yeah, I think you know what it is, and I say this all the time too. Fans, they know the deal. They know that they're not actually watching one evil person versus one good person. They know that it is not a real life, a comic book come to life. They realize that.
It's very rare that there's a real heel,
Right.
in wrestling.
And granted, like I'm more than happy to go out there and really like turn it up as a heel. But even then, the crowd recognizes that, yes, I'm playing a role. This is not who I am. I do not wake up on Monday and go to work and start throwing drop kicks to strangers on the train. Like, that's not how it works. Like, we're all human beings. We're playing a role. The good guy's playing just as much of a role as I am. So everybody is on that page. And when it comes down to that, you do what you need to do to just be as entertaining as possible, in the hopes that A, the promoter wants to bring you back, and B, you're entertaining enough for somebody to want to wear your likeness on their body. So that's why that merch is super important to me.
I agree. I like when people wear my T-shirts. It makes me feel special and warm and fuzzy. That somebody's spending their hard-earned money, like Effie did at Butch vs. Gore. He wore it out, and I tell everybody because it was great. So everybody's watching Butch vs. Gore on IWTV. And sees that match. That's my logo on Effie. So I'm just saying. And then, but moving forward, the other one I want to talk about is Scotty Wilde, because also you've had a long-standing rivalry, and I'm sure there's plenty of stories. And from your just reaction, I get a sense.
Yeah, I honestly, we're talking about shows. What happened to wrestling shows? Scotty Wilde is one of those dudes who, like, I genuinely miss seeing all the time. He's such a good dude. It's the blessing and the curse of being considered like the hidden gem of Western Massachusetts, because being called the gem is cool, but the fact that like that guy should be everywhere. Like it's wild to me that Scotty is not like really picked up. He's stupid good, stupid athletic. And he's always a blast to work with. Like, again, he's one of those dudes that I could go in there with and we could hit each other as hard as we want to. And then it just, big hugs at the end because, we're all just trying to make money together.
Well, the New England is the greatest blessing and the greatest curse in wrestling, because it's so well connected that you could spend your entire career in New England on the indies and never ever have to leave and never ever run out of promotions. Because you have arguably the greatest indie promotion in New England, which is Beyond, which is I think that's one of the only promotions you haven't wrestled for in the Northeast.
I have wrestled for them a number of times, a number of years.
Great. So that's defeated at that point. I'll take the defeat on that one. I'll take the L on it. But still, you have Beyond. Then you have Chaotic. You have New England. Championship Wrestling. You obviously have Limitless. You have Limitless sister company. And then I think there's like 3 or 4 more, obviously.
Oh, yeah. There's so many like that have like actual reach over there. And then countless others like I said, I will put PvP shows up against any other promotion because they're great, but they're never recorded and they're never put out there. Like centrally from PvP, so nobody really gets to see them. So that's not a promotion that's really on a lot of people's radar, despite the fact that, again, I would put PvP shows up against anything, anywhere.
And speaking about shows that are right now up against a lot of stuff and have gotten a lot of attention, we got to talk about The Road. And I am not Danger Kid. I want to make that perfectly clear. There might be resemblance here. I am not Danger Kid, but we are going down the road. This is season 3. This is the opening, everybody. as soon as I'm gonna get a letter from like a cease and desist letter in the mail the next week from Limitless for that one. But obviously you and Chris make your debut, and you guys have two tag team matches, one against Andrew Palace and Sean Phoenix, and then the competition. And so I thought that competition match was robbery, pure robbery. And I thought that the Andrew Palace and Sean Phoenix match was a solid match as well.
Yeah, it was. It was the first time either of us had worked with either team. It was actually pretty cool to hang with because I've known Andrew Palace for years because he's done some shots in Jersey and I've done some shots out near him in like the Cleveland, Pittsburgh area. So like I know of him, but it was the first time I met Sean Phoenix and like it's again one of those things where like that punk rock connection. All right, we're buddies now. And the competition were dudes I legit like I had never heard of, never met because they were like you talk about like you could just kind of stay in this area forever, and they were like the main tag team of Maine. Like they were the tag team for years. It was put to me by Johnny Torres when he put that match together, and he's like, so these guys, when Randy, the promoter from Limitless, was going to shows, this was his favorite tag team. So you guys got to get a good match out of them. And I think everybody worked really well together in that one. That was a lot of fun.
So let's talk about the road because obviously this was season 2, and there's one more match we're going to talk about.
Sure.
And I'm going to preface that match in the best way possible. And there's a reason why I asked the question, and I mentioned something earlier. This question I've built the entire interview around, but give me like 3 questions before this.
Go for it. Anyhow,
so obviously the road season 2, season 1 is pre-recorded. All the matches are typically done within a day or two or in a taping setting. I'm not saying anything yet that's too revealing that they don't already know and other people have said. And so obviously, and then sitting in the crowd as well are all the wrestlers. And so it's a very unique environment to wrestle in because what you have is that you have something that you don't even know how it's necessarily going to be placed or cut per se, where your match is going to be, what episode it's going to be on right when you start. You have a general idea, and also you're wrestling in front of the boys, for lack of a better word. And I know that the road has been, and Limitless has been very good on COVID testing. And so obviously, what is that entire environment like? Because it's not a traditional wrestling environment.
No, it's not. It's certainly something that's very different. It definitely took a lot of us a bit to get used to in terms of like, what are we doing? We're in the crowd. Like, how are we working for the cameras or are we working for the people here? Because if the people here are silent, what is that going to sound like to the people at home? But if the people at home don't give a damn about what we're doing, like there's a lot going on, but after a while you kind of get used to it. You get into a groove. And you see what works and what doesn't, and it becomes kind of second nature. You just go out there and you do your thing and you have fun, and that's really like I think the main thing about it is that it's fun. So that's why it just becomes such an easy thing to do for a lot of us on the road.
And one of the things about season 2 that is more interesting than season 1 is that AG left. Obviously, he WWE cruiserweight stuff. He's killing it. And so that left a big void in the road. And it actually opened up a huge amount of opportunity. I was just speaking with Alec Price, and that's a big opportunity for a lot of people. Obviously, Christian Casanova stepped up. A few other people have stepped up. And so there's a lot more attention now on what I feel is a bunch of people who haven't gotten an opportunity because, well, there's a big space that needs to be filled up on who are the top people there. And so obviously you're coming in. And so what is that like knowing that Limitless just sort of got one of their mainstays is up in WWE and that there's a lot of attention to the IWTV and it being streamed and that people are actively engaging with Limitless. And, and I don't mean to put down Beyond, but Beyond is on hiatus. And so obviously and also the Limitless is filling that wrestling void. And so there's a lot more attention than I think if this was not COVID, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, I think that the thing you said, we can right on the head when it comes to like there being like this opening space where, AG is gone and what do we do from here? Who's going to take that over? And you have so much talent that in that area, just literally talent that's been there forever, that's just kind of waiting in the wings for their shot to get eyes on them. Like Christian Casanova, again, what an incredible example. That guy is going to be beyond just signed fairly soon, I'm sure of it, but like he's going to own wrestling. He's unreal. Alec Price is stupid talented. I flippin' love to watch Alec Price work.
Guy too. The guy doesn't know how good he is.
I mean, I think he doesn't know how good he is. He's going to find out real soon because he's definitely getting tested here and there on how good he is, and he's like passing with flying colors. I love to watch Alec Price.
Most entertaining guy. The way he speaks, the way he does a promo. So good. Fucking good.
So yeah, there's so many people there that are just waiting for that shot, and they're being able to get it. Like they're not waiting, so to speak. They're grabbing that brass ring. I'm looking at it in the same way as well. I know that, like, all right, my bread and butter is going to be tag teams here. Like, yeah, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to have my singles matches, and I'm going to beat people from pillar to post, and I'm going to have fun. But I'm also never going to be a quarter or an eighth, the slightest bit of the athlete that either Alec or Christian Casanova is. So I need to do what I do well, and that and nobody else is doing as well as I do. One of those things being tag team wrestling. And I feel like we have managed to really stand out on that show, being a tag team of two bruisers who just bulldoze through competition, for lack of a better term, having wrestled the competition.
And to even, I'm sure there's going to be more stuff. You said you're going up anyway this weekend for Limitless and doing some tapings.
Yep, season
and
3.
That should be fun, and I'm excited. So obviously, more's coming is the solution right there. So I'm not going to press too hard on that, but I do want to talk about one more match with Limitless, and
sure.
I mentioned it already, sort of, or I set the table up nicely for it, where this match is like Blank was to Apricots with Still Life in Paris, and that is your match with Kennedy Copeland. And so that's what this match was in many ways, because in many ways I think you pushed Kennedy over into a new era, and I think you brought out what you bring out the best in people, which is chaos. And so I thought this match was brilliant, and I think that in many ways this is a trajectory and almost like cocking the hammer a little bit for Kennedy and shooting her out, because since that match she's had a bunch of stuff, and like she's almost on a whole new level. There was Kennedy before this match, and then new Kennedy, and I love Kennedy.
No, I tell you what, man, I'm a huge fan of hers, and I have been for like a long time. And this was one of those situations where like I showed up for the tapings, and I requested that match, and Kennedy thought I was joking. She was like, "You serious?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course. Let's make it happen." And she was stoked, and I was just like, "I'm going to bring out everything in you that I know is there," and it was. I'll tell you what. I don't believe for a second she weighs more than like 90 pounds, but she swings and hits like a 300-pounder. I will give her all the credit in the world. She stepped up to the plate. I really enjoyed that match. I had a lot of fun with it. And again, like I recognize what my position is in the stage that I'm at in pro wrestling, where, being able to bring something like that out of a performer where it's already there, they just need the ability to bring it out. I'm happy to be that venue to make that happen.
Yeah, I think that's also another amazing lesson for young wrestlers, is that knowing your place. And I don't mean like being put in your place. I mean knowing where you're supposed to be, because obviously you're a veteran at this point and you're not, a rookie. And so you can do things for somebody that they can't do. And Kennedy obviously has less experience. She's newer. And so I felt in this match, you gave her that thrust, and you also can sort of see things and maybe call something in a match that that she's going to hit. Versus, because you have, like 13 years of experience, versus somebody who has 2 years of experience. And so, like, and I love it. I don't know what else to say on that, because it's so interesting, and I'm because I think that some people who've been doing this for 15 years don't even know how to do that. And I think it shows just ring awareness and also understanding the business side of things.
Yeah, it was definitely a highlight of a very slow 2020. I still feel like even if I was booked every weekend, that match would have been a highlight for me, just because there was something about what we did in that match that just felt, nothing about it felt forced. It just felt, everything felt organic, and it's rare that you get that in every case. And I feel like there was nothing about it that felt fake in any way.
And I also think it was a nice touch that it was live or it premiered, and obviously it was on Limitless, and there was less competition. I feel because one of the things that I love about Limitless is that they don't compete with AEW, they don't compete with NXT, they don't compete with Impact. They're right before AEW and NXT, and I think that is one of the most brilliant moves because they're not forcing people to choose what wrestling they want to watch, and everything sort of bleeds into each other. And it's super smart, and also there's less competition. I think that is also massively helping. I think a lot of people saw this match, and a lot of people loved what Kennedy did, and I don't think people truly realize how good you did in this match as well, and how far you pushed her, and how you I guess sort of coddled her. Again, it's like blank creating apricots with still life in Paris. That is the perfect analogy.
I always say it takes two to tango. So, as much input as I would have, I wouldn't be great without a great dancing partner. That's how I look at it.
But that's a humble way to look at it. So, and I call humble BS because I think you really were the driving force, and I think she stepped up to the plate. But that's my opinion. But having said all that, and you sort of mentioned something saying that this was your highlight of 2020. And we were talking a little bit about COVID before. And so obviously COVID wrecked 2020 hard. And you're a comic book guy. I'm a comic book guy. And one of the things that obviously we saw a bunch of Comic-Cons getting canceled. San Diego got canceled, New York Comic Con got canceled, and everything in between. A bunch of anime cons got canceled, and wrestling sort of followed a similar suit. And so, how have you been affected by that, beyond just money and not being able to wrestle? Because obviously, this does have consequences.
Sure. I mean, there was a lot. 2020 was going to be a really awesome year for me in terms of, just doing, again, what I love. And what I love is wrestling and being able to travel. I had debuts in multiple new states. I was going to be wrestling at a Comic-Con in Connecticut. It was just all this really cool stuff. And, things happen. And it's unfortunate, but it's kind of the hands you're dealt. Like, how are we going to deal with it? I think and I know we speak for more than just myself on this, and a lot of other wrestlers have, voiced this, publicly and privately, where the entire stoppage of everything and slowing everything down was needed by a lot of us. Like, my body needed it. I was really, really beat up. It was hard for me to move and stuff like that. And the fact that I was able to take that rest and, work less often really did wonders for me. In general, I think. Yeah. Go ahead.
So on that note, Roman Reigns said this a while back. He said, the NFL has an off season, baseball has an off season. UFC fighters, 4, sometimes 6 months in between fights. Obviously wrestling doesn't have an off season, and maybe wrestling does need an off season to some degree because it is a physical activity. It's a physical sport, for lack of a better word. And I don't really care. Running on the ropes, it hurts. Those ropes are not, made of plastic. They're not soft. Getting pushed off a turnbuckle hurts. Grappling hurts. So do you feel that to some degree that wrestling needs somewhat of an off season?
I don't know if it needs an off season, so to speak. I understand the reasoning behind it. And I do agree that we certainly need a lighter schedule, especially, guys who are working on TV could certainly use a lighter schedule in what they're doing. I think the issue it comes down to is, sports have an off season for the purpose of resting. Nothing they do is episodic. If the Jets or the Giants lose this week, they've got next week. It's not the same because wrestling is entertainment. So, if you kind of go with something and you have momentum and you're building that momentum and then it's up off season time, well, now you're back to zero. It's a bit different because things are now, if we had the ability to do like legit long-term booking and people were able to put this together in such a way, like, years back where, in the territory days, there were wrestlers who literally would just wrestle for like a certain number of months and they'd go to like do something like George Animal Steel was a professor. And then during his breaks, he would wrestle and he would be written in and written out. If we could do something like that, I think that would be great. But I also think the issue is that with corporate sponsorships and, WWE being, part of the stock market and having, people buying into the company and all these other factors with TV and ratings and, all this fickle nonsense, is it boils down to what a writer wants one week might not be what a writer wants the next week. How do you script an off season with that?
It can get complicated, and I think in many ways, like I think the road between seasons, if there was like 3 weeks in between, and you were a regular wrestling every single week, or there was a month in between, that's a way to do it because you're not losing tremendous momentum, but you're still getting a break. And I think that's one way how to do it. But even still, like the indies are hard in many ways.
Yeah, you're making your own schedule. You're doing all your own everything. So at the end of the day, it's like, if I'm paying my bills with this and I have to take like a month off to just, heal up an injury, that's a month without money. And nobody can survive that. That's rough. It's impossible.
And to even go further off of this with COVID, because obviously everything got shut down pretty much. I think we could safely say April 1st, everything was shut down. And all the way pretty much to June, things started happening a little bit in June, but then things also were very slow to start. And I think season 1 of The Road started, I think August maybe or September. Season 2, I think started either like late October, and then obviously I think season 2 just ended, or is it ending next week?
I think next week, and then they have 1 week after that, so it's in 2 weeks. Oh no, it's tomorrow is the one episode, and then next week is the last episode. So yes, you're correct.
So we got 2, and then we're getting season 3. But there's going to be maybe like 3-4 weeks in between season 2 and season 3. So that's what's happening. And then obviously, my question is that, like, how do you feel that wrestling is going to be addressed? Because, and I'll state my opinion, because this is how I feel, is that I'm not so ready to jump back in to a show, not to mention that COVID is now spiking up again. Obviously, it's getting a bit more complicated. We're entering the winter months, so pretty much till March, I think. It's going to be a much more treacherous situation, not to mention also, like, Primetime is a great example where they had like 500 people there. And I don't know if we're ever going to have 500, shows again for a while. So I'm just curious how you view it, because I'm a fan looking in and you're a wrestler looking out. Because, and I know that you're down to level with the fans, but it's also different where you're the wrestler and I'm the fan. So I'm curious your perspective.
Right. I think, man, a lot of promoters are going to try, and I mean, they currently are in the midst of this pandemic, just running shows recklessly. I think people just want to make that money regardless. Smarter promotions, which I think, the better spots and spots that, I associate myself with, are not going to run until things are better or until they can do so safely. Synergy Pro Wrestling has stopped running shows for the next couple of months until they can start doing things outdoors again, because we can't do that in the winter. So you've got to wait a couple of months. If it means making sure everybody's safe, that's what we've got to do. Spots like that, and requiring the COVID tests and a lot of other little details. Smarter promotions are going to be fine about it, but I do agree with you that I think it's going to be quite some time before fans as a whole feel comfortable enough to show up to shows the way that they used to, just every weekend, or going to multiple shows and things like that. And then just even it's going to be hard money wise with not being you're not going to draw 500 people. You're 100% correct. Like it's just not, those days are done. But I do think that when wrestling does come back and we have COVID under control, or it's dying out, or it's done, you're going to see some really well attended shows because people are dying to go to wrestling shows. People are dying to do anything at this point.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very slow return. I think wrestling is not dead. I think it's far from dead. I think that the road and even BLP shows them have maybe 25 fans there, and it's very selective. Or like what they're doing with the Super Bowl, where there's usually going to be 8,000 people, give or take, in the entire arena. Which means that everybody's going to be relatively spaced out. I think things like that are going to be the future for the next year and year and a half. I really think so, because I think that, and this is me being very pessimistic, which means I'm always right. I think it's going to take a while logistically to get this under control vaccination wise, because I don't think logistically you can deliver 100 million vaccinations in a year. I just don't think it can logistically be done. I think that is beyond optimistic, and it's not anti-vaccination. It's legitly, I just don't know how it can be done. And
no, I can understand that completely. I know that I have so far one shot of the vaccine. I'm waiting on my second in February, but I also know that when I went to get a COVID test yesterday for Limitless this weekend, there was a giant sign outside the door that said, "We do not have any vaccines until further notice." So again, I think you're correct about it being a very slow process for everything to roll out. However, I do think that once we do start to get the ball rolling, they're dying to go to shows. I'm telling you, like, I could see it with people trying to like figure things out to go to movie theaters at this point. Like, people want to go out.
I also think that people right now, we're almost a year in, and I think people are reaching the end of their I guess tolerance for this.
Right.
I really think so. Where I see it, and this isn't, again, anti-mask. It's not any of that. I think people are legitimately reaching the end of their tolerance.
It's hard to keep that kind of it's hard to keep attention spans going. Like, it's a threat. It's as rough. This is terrible. Like, we have to take it seriously. You have to mask up. You have to do all those things. But I also do recognize that there are, like, people are just, they want to go back to the way, and we're never going to go back to the way that it once was, but they want that sense of normalcy, because as human beings, we thrive on we thrive on repetition, structure,
and we're social animals too. By nature, it is. You're sitting next to somebody. Your inclination is to say hi to them, even if you don't know them. Your inclination is to say hi, and especially at a wrestling show. If I know you're a fan and I'm a fan, your inclination is to say hi. And so obviously it's very difficult for people. And I was speaking to somebody, and what they were saying is that it was Devontae's. And he was saying that, like, at Chikara, I know it's a dirty word. Everybody, we're all adults in the room. But what he was saying is that every week there were people, every 2 weeks, there were people who this was their escape, and they were dealing with some serious issues in their life. And, for 6 hours or so, their issue didn't exist. And so it is massively detrimental to people, especially who view wrestling, and I hate to use it this way, but as therapy. Because people, it's your escape. It's an environment that creates a vibe, and your problem doesn't exist, in many ways for a few hours. And so obviously it's been very difficult for a lot of people. So I agree that I think when it does come back, people are going to love it, and that people are going to flock to it.
It's no different than comic books, or no different than binging TV shows. It's an escape, and it's allowed to be an escape. It's entertainment. It could be whatever you want it to be. It's art, so you can treat it however you'd like to treat it. It could be a commodity, or it could be something that you use to escape and leave your normal life. It could be many things, and I support all of those things.
And so since you mentioned comic books, and I mentioned that you're a comic book fan, your business card has a particular cool book on it. I don't know if you want to tell what your business card's logo
Yeah,
is.
no, it's the Year One podcast. I stole that from Batman Year One. The logo is my face, pretty much on Batman. Year One, it writes itself.
Before we talk about the year one podcast, because you mentioned Erica Lee was on there, or Leigh was on there, and obviously, I'm curious how you feel about comic books and what's happened with that, because a lot's happened this year with comic books. Obviously, DC left Diamond, and they left their other publisher.
Yeah, no, it's been a wild year, man. At the end of the day, I don't want to get involved in comic book politics like that. I just want my books every week. I don't care how you get them from the distributor to the store, as long as you get them in my hands. That's all I care about. I do know that Diamond has a miserable reputation for being just good to local shops. But I'm also super lucky where I live in, Metro New York. So my shop hit me up. They're like, "Hey, we don't have this book that was on your pull list." I was like, "All right, well, I could literally walk to another shop and pick it up. That's no big deal." So it's a little bit easier for me. But I also recognize that it has been a wild year with Diamond and everything else that's gone on.
And yet, there's some amazing stuff coming out. Future State by itself there's good stuff out of Future State, and there's bad stuff. And obviously, we're getting ready for a big reboot in DC anyway. So who knows what's going to happen?
Another one.
Yeah. There's some good stuff in all this, and so obviously, I'm curious. Before we talk about year one, what are you currently reading? Because I'm curious on my own personal.
There's a lot of stuff. Better question is, what am I not reading? So I am currently reading. Batman is always on my list, so I'm currently. I picked up the Future State Dark Detective and Next Batman. I'm also picking up the Future State Batman Superman, which is the only time that I'll ever read anything Superman is when Batman is attached. I'm reading a bunch of the X books. I was like that. X-Men was my first foray into comic books as a kid. So obviously normal X-Men, but also I think Marauders is the best book that they're currently writing within that the X-Men universe. New Mutants is also fantastic. I'm reading that. X-Force. I'm reading. I think there's one more in there, but I'm blanking on it. And then there's a couple of indie books that I've really enjoyed as of late. Spawn, I feel like has never left something that I enjoy watching or reading rather. But I've picked up stories here and there, like mini series. What was I just? Scumbag. That one I'm really, really enjoying. That's I think another Image book, which is pretty much like, hey, let's take the worst human being in existence and give them superpowers. How does that work? Boom, and we've got this. Miss Marvel, another one. Daredevil, I think, is my favorite. I told you I collect a lot. There's a lot of stuff here. Daredevil's the best book that's being written right now from any publishing spot. And Magnificent Miss Marvel, I think Kamala Khan is the best character that Marvel has created next to Miles Morales in the last 20 years, my opinion.
I'll agree with you on Miles Morales, and I think they did a great job with Miss Marvel, and I think that's going to be super interesting, especially with the TV show that's coming out.
Oh yeah,
I think what they're going to do with that, and I also think they took a big risk on it, and I think that they were smart enough to do it, and I think that they really hit a nice home run with it, and I also think it's a nice alternative to Captain Marvel, which isn't doing that well.
Yeah, I mean, for me, a lot of the spacey stuff, it never really jumped out to me. Because I was way more X-Men, where it was like, when X-Men went into space and dealt with the Shi'ar, I was like, eh. But when they were here and Senator Kelly was discriminating against them, I was all in on that. So Captain Marvel, not so much. Miss Marvel, which is literally just so perfectly well written. Yeah, that kind of stuff I think is really what jumps out to me.
And then Cinna Grace's run on Iceman was phenomenal.
What I'll have to get that. I have no knowledge of that one. I might have to pick that up.
It's when Iceman comes out as gay.
Right. Yeah.
Super interesting. And Cinna is a gay Muslim
Oh,
writer.
okay.
Now, and so I think Cinna does some art as well. And so you have a gay Muslim, and I say this very, very, knowing that it could backfire when I say it and how it sounds. But you have somebody who is identifying as the character. They're writing it from a very unique perspective, and it's super, super interesting how it's written and what it's done and the risks that were taken, and also the criticism that Cinna could have faced writing it, which is awesome. And the entire thing, the fact that Marvel/Disney took the risk on it, brilliant. And then the book got canceled until the trade paperback came out. And then they had to walk it back because the trade paperback outsold so many of other Marvel's books. And yeah. And so they realized that the physical books, like the issues were not being picked up, but the trade paperbacks were. Which is how the series got back into print and continuing, which is awesome. When you think
fantastic.
It's such a cool comic history thing. But enough about comics. Let's talk about year one, because you're sort of in a similar space as I am. But yours is definitely tailored to one person, to one topic, and it might be slightly more narrower than mine. And who is your first guest? Because I think I know who it was.
Episode 1, I believe, was Vinny Pacifico. Might have been. I released the first 3 episodes on the same day as a big marketing tool. I have a degree in business, so that's what that came from. But released 3, and it was Vinny, it was Nyla, and Mark Adam Haggerty was the third one, which I have since deleted because I do not support. I do not support Predators on the Year One podcast.
I think everybody knows the story, and everybody has a story about him. And my story is that he was just unprofessional to me. Just not even a business orientation, but he was unprofessional towards me at that Grand Prix primetime show that's name I can't say that, the Ultimate X match. And he was just unprofessional to me, and it rubbed me the wrong way. In which that, I'll briefly tell what happened. He got high during the middle of the show, and he was just unprofessional to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird that a lot of people in wrestling, in some cases, when you start hearing about predators in wrestling, you could put 2 and 2 together and be like, okay, maybe I ignored the signs for this because I didn't see that coming. Nobody saw that coming from Mark, but I also got to respect the fact that everybody in wrestling was kind of like, nope, that is persona non grata now. No matter what our relationship was, that is it. And that's that's the way it should be. I mean, you can't be doing the kind of stuff that he did and not face legit consequences like that.
And he did a lot of damage to a lot of companies, and he left a nice gasoline burning fire trail, for lack of a better word, and a lot of companies lost business because of him. And I know that for a fact because it doesn't take a rocket scientist. But my issue had nothing to do with that. It's when you treat me in a disrespectful way, that's a problem. Before anything else, because this happened way before all that. This happened 4 or 5 months before everything started coming out. And he was just unprofessional. And the way I view it is that, and look, I tend to be libertarian. I tend to, I don't really care what you do on your time. If you want to drug up, it doesn't bother me. But if you're at a show and it's intermission and I go say hi to you and you're high, it's a little bit of a problem.
No, I completely understand where you're coming from. I think it's why it's important. Yeah. It's why it's important to get, all of those interactions with fans and, people who are out there. You have to have those interactions always be something that somebody can go home and be positive about, because, you don't want to leave that negative taste in somebody's mouth. And again, this is why I'm very much about if you're going to come hang at that merch table, we're going to have fun. It's going to be positive, whether you decide to buy something or not. Always make sure that my reputation is of a positive one.
Now, I'll tell the flip side of the story of Nyla. Nyla is the nicest person in wrestling, and she
Wonderful
is
human being.
fantastic. She is like the nicest person. So my story about her is that she was at I think, Fight Club, which is another promotion, small promotion in DC. And they only ran like one or two shows. And she's there as a guest. And then not even like she just wanted to show up and sit in the audience. And so I think Jason invited her from Flying V. And so now during intermission, I'm like, hey, can I take a picture? She's like, yeah, sure. And then like super nice, super friendly, and awesome. Nicest person in wrestling. And an amazing heel as well.
Nyla is one of my absolute favorite people in professional wrestling, like bar none, just wonderful human being.
And so I love her, and she's great, and it's my profile pic. That's Nyla, everybody. So there you go. So having said all that, I do want to give you an opportunity to promote yourself. Obviously, where can people find Year One? You know, I don't know how many episodes are out. I don't know if you're on hiatus or it's still going on, and who you've got going on. I know obviously Erica Lay's been on it, and I know a bunch of other people as well.
Sure. So the Year One podcast can be found literally anywhere that you could find a podcast. I have scoured the internet and made sure that this thing is available literally everywhere. If you got iTunes, it's on iTunes. If you got Spotify, it's on there. If you want to listen to podcasts on Pandora, I don't know why you would, but we're on there too. Literally anywhere that you can get a podcast, we'll be there. Just look up Year One Wrestling Podcast. This week is number 47. I've gone every single week for almost a year now. This week, my guest is KTB, GCW wrestling superstar, and Jersey local. I've known KTB for ages. The week prior, we had who did we have last week? I think it was Lucas Calhoun, aka Chris Horror Show. Erica Lee was a couple weeks back. I talked to a lot of people. I've got a lot waiting. We got a whole lot going on. So you can literally find this podcast anywhere that there is a podcast. We will have a new episode every single Wednesday. And then you can follow it on all social media where I drop previews and pictures from the Year One of our guests whenever I can get them at Year One Pod. It's one like the number one.
And then going beyond that, where can people follow you on social media? Because I know you have a Twitter. I don't know if you have a Facebook page. Do you have an Instagram? I'm going to take a gamble.
Got everything. You can find me on all social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at King of Chaos NYC, all one word. And you could also, if you're looking, because, I love any of the follows, the retweets, anything, all the support is more than appreciated and loved. But if you're looking to support your buddy here with your wallet, you can go ahead, prowrestlingtees.com/King of Chaos NYC, or my personal online merch table, which is kingofchaosnyc.bigcartel.com. If you Google King of Chaos NYC, all of this will come up, and you can just click away on everything if you'd like.
Well, on that note, and I've been saying this indefinitely, obviously, if you like what you see, you have to support it economically. Hopefully that rhymed enough.
I'm for it.
But in all seriousness, joking aside, if you really like what you see, you definitely have to support wrestlers and people who are creating things and doing things in this sector and entertainment, with your money, because it actually means something. Buy a shirt, buy an 8x10. I don't know what other items you sell, but obviously you have other things that are out there. And so obviously that's the best way how to support somebody, because it actually goes directly to your pocket, which then helps subsidize everything else, as well as, you're basically wearing somebody's brand on you, and then wherever you're at, well, congratulations. That also helps with name recognition. Now, if you're in a situation and money's tight because COVID's complicated, or you're making sure your water, your electricity, 4 walls are surrounding you, your rent's covered, your mortgage is covered, your taxes are covered, your dog is fine, any other problem, please take care of yourself economically first.
Absolutely.
because that is super important, especially during COVID. Obviously, we are at the end of January, and we have another 2 to 3 months before it starts getting warmer, and it's going to get a little bit better, but it's still going to be a problem. So that's something to keep in mind. So please take care of yourself. And if you're in that situation, there's no excuse, though, not to follow people on social media at this point. Social media is free. Twitter's free. Instagram's free. Facebook's free. Checking out somebody's website is free. Retweeting somebody when they're wrestling is free. It doesn't cost any money, and it's super important because it lets people know that you're interested. It shares what's going on. It lets promoters know. It lets promotions know. And it also, when I get a retweet, and I don't know how you feel, I feel pretty good for about 30 seconds. It makes me feel like, oh, somebody actually cares enough to spend 3 seconds of their day with me retweeting, not to mention if they check out a bunch of my other stuff. And also, you should subscribe to the podcast. If you have an iPhone, legitimately, you have an app on your iPhone, everybody, that's a podcast app that you could type in, year one podcast or year one, and maybe Logan Black might appear too with it if you need to, and boom, you can subscribe right on your iPhone and listen to it right on your iPhone. And if you drive a car, most cars now allow you to connect your phone to it. So if you're going to work still, it's a great time to get that podcast listening. So I'm just saying there's no excuse anymore not to support and subscribe and all of that stuff, whether you're doing it with money or with your social media. Obviously, you should be doing both if you can, but if you're in a tough situation, as I stated before, you should absolutely be following on social media. It is super crucial right now with everything that's going on, and it's going to be even more crucial, not to mention that whenever you want to know where Logan is wrestling, boom, social media is going to be the best place to find it.
Always. And like I said, I've made it very, very easy for everybody because it's at King of Chaos NYC literally everywhere. So it couldn't be easier for you guys.
And on that note, I'm going to let you have the final word. So, floor is yours.
Oh, man. I'm going to end this the same way that I end my podcast, my final word on that every week, which is be awesome to each other and spread peace and love.